In a political climate rife with tension and division, Senior John Fetterman, D.Par, has sparked a fresh debate by asserting that there isn't a constitutional crisis unfolding within the Trump administration. His remarks, made during an interview with HuffPost on Wednesday, stand in stark contrast to the White House's claims that the judiciary is the true source of constitutional turmoil. The comments come as President Trump's second term faces an onslaught of legal challenges, with at least 57 lawsuits targeting his executive orders and policies. Fetterman's perspective diverges sharply from that of his Democratic colleague, Senator Chris Murphy, Decon, who recently warned that the United States is staring the death of democracy in the eyes. Meanwhile, the White House has accused liberal judges of abusing their power to obstruct the president's agenda, framing the judicial branch as the epicenter of a constitutional crisis. This clash of narratives underscores the deepening polarization in American politics and raises critical questions about the balance of power, the rule of law, and the future of democracy. Fetterman's perspective. It's just a lot of noise. Synonym. John Fetterman, known for his straightforward and often unconventional approach to politics, downplayed the notion of a constitutional crisis during his interview with HuffPost. When it was President Joe Biden, then you had a conservative judge jam it up on him. And now we have liberal judges that are going to stop these things. That's how the process works, Fetterman said. He added, there isn't a constitutional crisis and all of these things. It's just a lot of noise. Fetterman's comments reflect a pragmatic view of the judicial system's role in checking executive power. He emphasized that the back and forth between the executive and judicial branches is a normal part of the democratic process, rather than an existential threat to the Constitution. That's why I'm only going to swing on the strikes, he quipped, suggesting that he is focused on tangible issues rather than engaging in hyperbolic rhetoric. However, Fetterman's stance has drawn criticism from some within his own party, particularly those who view the Trump administration's actions as a direct assault on democratic norms. His remarks also contrast with the White House's aggressive rhetoric, which portrays the judiciary as a bastion of partisan activism. The White House's counterargument, judicial activism, and the real constitutional crisis. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded to Fetterman's comments by doubling down on the administration's narrative that the judiciary is the true source of constitutional dysfunction. The real constitutional crisis is taking place within our judicial branch, where district court judges in liberal districts across the country are abusing their power to unilaterally block President Trump's basic executive authority, Leavitt declared. Leavitt accused these judges of acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law, citing at least 12 injunctions issued against the administration in the past 14 days. She argued that many of these rulings lacked sufficient evidence or legal grounding, characterizing them as part of a broader effort by Democratic activists to undermine the president's agenda. This is part of a larger concerted effort by Democrat activists, and nothing more than the continuation of the weaponization of justice against President Trump, Leavitt said. She also dismissed media coverage of a constitutional crisis as fear-mongering, accusing outlets of misleading the public to advance a partisan narrative. Leavitt's remarks reflect the Trump administration's long-standing skepticism of the judiciary, which has frequently clashed with the president over issues ranging from immigration to environmental policy. The administration has often framed these legal battles as a struggle between the will of the people and an unelected, activist judiciary. Quick news flash to these liberal judges who are supporting their obstructionist efforts. 77 million Americans voted to elect this president, and each injunction is an abuse of the rule of law and an attempt to thwart the will of the people. Leavitt added, the legal onslaught, 57 lawsuits and counting. The Trump administration's second term has been marked by an unprecedented wave of legal challenges, with at least 57 lawsuits filed against its policies and executive orders. These lawsuits span a wide range of issues, including immigration, healthcare, environmental regulations, and voting rights. Many of these cases have resulted in injunctions that temporarily block the administration from implementing its policies, fueling accusations of judicial overreach. One of the most high-profile cases involves the administration's efforts to dismantle the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals (DACA) program, which protects undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children from deportation. Multiple courts have ruled against the administration, arguing that its attempts to end the program were arbitrary and capricious. Similarly, the administration's efforts to roll back environmental regulations, such as the Clean Power Plan, have been met with fierce resistance from environmental groups and Democratic-led states. The sheer volume of lawsuits has prompted the administration to adopt a more aggressive legal strategy, including appeals to higher courts and efforts to fast-track cases to the Supreme Court. However, this approach has also drawn criticism from legal experts, who argue that it undermines the rule of law and erodes public trust in the judiciary. Murphy's eye warning, staring the death of democracy in the eyes. While Fetterman has sought to downplay the severity of the situation, other Democrats have sounded the alarm about the state of American democracy. Senator Chris Murphy, Decon, has been particularly vocal, warning that the country is facing an existential threat. This isn't hyperbole to say that we are staring the death of democracy in the eyes right now, Murphy told CNN earlier this week. Murphy's comments reflect a growing sense of urgency among Democrats, who view the Trump administration's actions as part of a broader assault on democratic norms and institutions. He emphasized the importance of respecting court rulings, regardless of political ideology. The centerpiece of our democracy is that we observe court rulings, criminal court rulings, civil court rulings, and constitutional court rulings. No one is above the law, Murphy said, and whether we like it or not, the courts interpret the law. Murphy's warning echoes concerns raised by other prominent Democrats, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who have accused the Trump administration of undermining the rule of law and eroding the checks and balances that are essential to democracy. The role of the judiciary, activism or accountability. The debate over the judiciary's role in checking executive power lies at the heart of the current constitutional crisis. Critics of the Trump administration argue that the judiciary is fulfilling its duty to hold the president accountable and prevent abuses of power. They point to the Constitution's system of checks and balances, which was designed to ensure that no single branch of government becomes too powerful. However, the administration and its allies have accused liberal judges of overstepping their authority and engaging in judicial activism. They argue that these judges are motivated by partisan politics rather than a commitment to the rule of law. We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law, Leavitt said. This tension between judicial independence and accusations of activism is not new, but it has been exacerbated by the highly polarized political environment. The Trump administration's confrontational approach to the judiciary has further inflamed these tensions, raising concerns about the long-term impact on the rule of law and public trust in democratic institutions. The path forward, navigating the crises the legal battles continue to unfold. The question of how to navigate the current constitutional crisis remains unresolved. Fetterman's call to focus on substantive issues rather than engaging in hyperbolic rhetoric offers one potential path forward. However, his perspective is unlikely to satisfy those who view the Trump administration's actions as a fundamental threat to democracy. For its part, the White House has vowed to continue fighting the injunctions and pursuing legal remedies to overturn them. As the president clearly stated in the Oval Office yesterday, we will comply with the law and the courts, but we will also continue to seek every legal remedy to ultimately overturn these radical injunctions and ensure President Trump's policies can be enacted, Levitt said. Ultimately, the resolution of this crisis will depend on the ability of all branches of government to uphold their constitutional responsibilities and work together to preserve the rule of law. In the meantime, the debate over the state of American democracy is likely to remain a central issue in the ongoing political and legal battles. Conclusion: a nation at a crossroads. The contrasting views of Senator John Fetterman and the Trump administration highlight the deep divisions within American politics and the challenges facing the nation's democratic institutions. While Fetterman sees the current situation as a lot of noise, others warn that the country is facing an existential threat to its democracy.